Hi, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. Well, I just got back from the state fair, had a great time. It was Veterans Day, so anybody that served in the military got in for free. So I was going to, I am the only person probably that goes to the state fair that does not want to eat any of their stupid fried food. I don't like to ride their rides, but I do like to look around and meet different vendors and get different ideas and stuff like that. So I got to try out some different stuff. But one of my favorite things to do is to go to the Marine Corps booth and do pull-ups. That may seem like the dumbest waste of time of all time, but I'd like to go over there and test them because it is hilarious to me when they see some 60-year-old dude and goes, "Hey, can I borrow your pull-up bar?" And he can do 10 pull-ups. That cracks me up because they're just sitting there with their jaws dropped. And so here's a picture of me doing the pull-ups. Sorry, my t-shirt kind of pulled up a little bit, but I was knocking out my pull-ups, and it was interesting to watch people come up to me afterwards going, "Holy cow, I wish I could do that." And people saying, "Gosh, you got guts going up there and doing it." Well, frankly, we need more people with guts out there talking about being low carb, trying to push health and wellness and change. Because until we get to about 3%, we ain't going to see the change happening. See, this is, frankly, the low carb world is a grassroots movement. And in all grassroots movements, and this seems to be a universal constant, you can look back at history, and until that movement hits about 3%, no change happens. There's a small group of people that will hold on to an idea, but it isn't going to change society until it hits the critical mass of about 3% of the population. And the reason why I know this is you look back at, the United States, back when we were colonies in 1775. If you had done a referendum on whether we should pick a fight with the biggest superpower in the world, it would have failed miserably. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. People were kind of content. Yeah, there's this whole taxation without representation thing, but that's kind of on those guys. Frankly, most people would rather live their lives, without even questioning it. But thankfully, about 3% of the colonists became activists in the cause. And when they hit about 3%, they won us our independence. And you look at the number of active participants in the war, the Revolutionary War, that was about 3%. And this can work, by the way, for good or ill, because when you look at pre-Nazi Germany, Hitler's Nazi party didn't come into power until it hit about 3% of the population. And when that happened, we got plunged into World War II, and all the horrors of the Holocaust happened. So it works both ways. But this seems to be a pretty big universal constant of all major social change. At some point, when about 3% of the population glums on, civil rights movement, slave rebellions, changes in government, that 3% plus one seems to be about a pretty constant of the overall population. And guess what? Carnivore, low carb, we ain't 3% yet. We're getting there. It is a growing grassroots movement, but it is still relatively small. I mean, we've got hundreds of thousands, if not low millions of people, and we need a lot more. In a country of over 300 million people, we need a lot more than that. But you will notice that it's a growing movement because we have enemies. And guess what the forces of power always do when they have people that disagree with them? They try to silence them. And that's what's happening right now with YouTube. Take a look at their new guidelines, particularly dealing with health. And what they're saying is if you disagree with the WHO, if you disagree with local health guidelines, if you disagree with the major medical associations, we're going to try to deplatform you. Certainly reduce your impact. They are basically taking away voices of alternative health freedom. And this is a problem. And it's going to be a problem for the low carb community. We're going to have to find alternative sources because YouTube is going to be working to silence us. That's what's happening. Because frankly, we're starting to grow as a movement. What does that mean? Well, it means, look, if you go up against the American Diabetes Association and you're telling people, look, you can, diabetes is not irreversible and it is not progressive and it can be changed through diet and lifestyle, that goes against their guidelines. And they're going to deplatform your YouTube videos, or they're not going to share them very much. They're going to change the algorithm so that you don't show up in searches. Somebody's going to have to know what in the heck they're looking for in order to find your videos. If you disagree with the American Cancer Society and you say that, look, cancer is a metabolic disease and here's the evidence for it, and how a low carb diet can actually probably slow or not reverse cancer, they're going to silence you. And look, if you disagree with the American Heart Association and you think that eating meat and meat only is the only healthy way to eat, that is, if you're saying that that's a proper human diet, guess what they're going to do? They're going to silence you. You know why? Because you have enemies. Frankly, when you think about it, big food, or even our government and their people, because they're all in revolving door situations. They are moving from regulatory to industry, to regulatory to industry all the time. That's where they make their money and influence. The bureaucracy of big food and big pharma is working against you. We've got trillions of dollars, that are on the line. They do not want a bunch of healthy people not buying their products. Can you imagine what would happen if 3% of this country decided that they no longer were going to be bothering with health insurance, big medical, not buying pharmaceutical drugs, avoiding processed food, and all that results in? Do you know how much money they would lose? A lot. That's what they're fighting against, and they're more than willing to silence you. And you may be saying, well, who cares? I mean, so we lose a few fringe videos and stuff like that. What difference does that make? Look, all sorts of idiocy was considered mainstream medicine. If YouTube existed back during the 1700s, 1800s, people would still be bleeding. Doctors would be bleeding patients, trying to take away the bad humors and getting that out of people's systems. They thought they were healing people by opening up veins and bleeding people dry. They were killing them, but that was the standard of medicine. Lobotomies were the standard of medicine for anybody that was depressed. They would jam a spike up your skull and take out part of your brain, causing permanent brain damage, thinking that they were helping folks. There were doctors that literally would not wash their hands before they saw a patient because doctors are gentlemen, and that gentlemen can't transmit diseases because they didn't understand the germ theory. They killed one doc who was the first one to figure that out. It took Lister later on before it finally became accepted. And guess what? Lister's ideas weren't accepted very quickly either. But at some point it hit about 3% of the profession and it took over the place, where doctors finally understood that they needed to wash their hands and slow down the spread of germs. That's the problem with big medicine. There's no consensus. Today's consensus is tomorrow's stupid idea. And medicine is replete with absolute stupidity that people took as dogma over the years. And it takes those outside voices and grassroots movements to change really stupid ideas. And but the powers that be want to keep things the way they are, and they are going to work like crazy to silence their critics. So realize what you're up against. You have very real enemies. Big pharma, big food, big medicine. Heck, even your own doctor. So hopefully you will realize that this is part of a grassroots movement, that we ain't there yet. It's growing, but it ain't up to that 3%. When it gets there, success will be ours. Till then, keep getting strong, keep eating meat, keep going low carb. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I try to put out a new message a couple of times a week, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you like this message, please hit the like and subscribe button. Join this growing movement. be part of this. Support other YouTube channels like Dr. Barry and Sean Baker and other people like that are getting out a really good, important message. And the more people we have out there, listen to their commercials. They're monetized channels, and if you listen to their commercials, that helps mess up the YouTube algorithm, and people will actually, they're going to be forced to run ads and keep those channels up. And that's important. Hopefully you will like and subscribe to my channel and join us in this growing grassroots movement. I will talk to you soon.